YouTube, how are we? Welcome to today's video. So I'm going to walk you through some arm exercises that I think are worth adding into your arm day or whatever day rotation for when you want to train biceps and triceps. So I've just finished training one of my normal workout days, which is why I've already got my earphones in and I'm already down to my t-shirt because I'm already kind of sweaty and hot. But I thought that I would throw on the end of this my favorite bicep and tricep exercises so that you guys can try them out and see how you get on. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Okay, so we're going to start out with a bicep exercise. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through each exercise individually, go through some pointers and why I've personally chosen them out, and then at the end I'll kind of run through maybe what sort of an order and the sets and reps that I would look to do with these. So first of all, we're going to start out with a preacher curl. Now I am opting to use a cable machine here purely because in my studio I don't have a bicep curl machine. If you do have a bicep curl machine, feel free to use that instead, of course. Using a cable is really good because you are able to line everything up to fit your body perfectly. If you choose to use just a standard bicep curl like machine, like a preacher curl machine, I would look to use a single grip, so like one arm at a time. Now, the reason that I would do that is just again so that you can line yourself up better with the machine. If you've got both arms out in front of you and you're curling with both arms, you're literally just going to be in the same position as everybody else, and there's no room for like individual difference. So I know it will take a little bit of extra time, but if you've got that extra time, it is 100% worth it. So with this exercise, we're getting a really nice challenge to the top portion of the curl. So as we go through that elbow flexion, we're getting a challenge to the bicep. However, as we straighten out our arm, especially with this particular cable exercise, we're not going to be getting a challenge to the bicep. So that's just one thing to note and bear in mind with this. When we go into a couple of the other exercises later on, there's a bit of a difference there, and that's why the exercise order and the exercise selection is super important, because we want to make sure that we're getting a full challenge to the bicep. So with this one, challenge at the top, but no challenge when the elbow is fully extended. Okay, first tricep exercise, we're going to go into a single arm cable pushdown. Now with this, obviously I have attached, we're going to pulley at its highest point. We're going to have a fabric D handle if you've got one, which obviously originally would look like that. I've just pulled it like this and attached it just to make it a little bit easier to get into. But obviously if you don't have one of these, you're just going to have to hold on to the actual cable itself. Now with this, we are going to get a challenge to the elbow throughout the full movement. What you're going to see me do is stand sideways to the cable. So the shoulder that's closest to the cable is the side that isn't working. I'm going to grab hold of that cable. Now you're going to see when I position the camera to the side that my hand is going to move outwards away from my body, and that's just in line with the natural path of motion that that elbow is going to want to go through. Sometimes you'll see people standing face on with the cable machine, and I've done this myself. You think about keeping that elbow pinned to your side, but actually that hand naturally just wants to move out ever so slightly. So if you stand with shoulder close to the cable machine and then grab onto it with the hand furthest away, you can hold onto the cable machine for a little bit of support if you need to. You're going to think about pushing and extending down through the elbow till your elbow is locked out, and then nice and slowly back up to the top. I'm going to go as far as I can until my elbow starts to move. Now that's going to look different for everyone, so it's not just as simple as saying, okay, bring your hand up to 90 degrees. Once my elbow starts moving, I've gone too far, so we want to stop just before that. Now for some people that's going to look like that, for some people it's going to be quite high and further up. That's going to depend on a few things, anything from just like structure, mobility, and then also how much tissue you've got on your bicep. So you might find that if you've got quite big biceps, you can't go further up because the tissue is going to block how far the elbow can move. Okay, we're going to move into the second bicep exercise. So we're going to do a cable drag curl. Now I absolutely love this exercise. But what's important to note here is where we're going to get the most amount of challenge. So we spoke when we went through that cable preacher curl about how we're going to get the most amount of challenge with that exercise at the top, so when we're in that position of elbow flexion. This exercise is the reverse. So we're going to find that because we're A, using the cables, but B, also we're going to be in a position of shoulder extension, that we're going to have the most amount of challenge to the bicep at the very bottom of the exercise. And as we curl up, that weight is going to start to sort of drop off essentially, and it's going to start to feel lighter. So we're going to have, like I say, an exercise with the preacher curls where we're getting the most amount of challenge at the top, and then the drag curls that we're about to do now where we're going to get the most amount of challenge at the bottom of the exercise. Okay, we're going to move into another tricep exercise. So with the cable pushdowns that we went through, we were training the triceps there in a position of a neutral shoulder slash a little bit of shoulder extension. Whereas with this exercise, we're going to be training the tricep in a position of shoulder flexion. So our arm is going to be out in front of us. So there's going to be a little twist to this tricep dumbbell skull crusher. So traditionally we see our dumbbell skull crushers being performed like this, which isn't necessarily horrendous, but what we can do is improve the skull crusher simply by starting in this position and dropping the dumbbell down to the opposite side of our face. So why is this? So when we're in this position just here with the elbow stacked and the weight on top of the joint, we are not getting a challenge to the tricep. We only start to get a challenge to the tricep as we start to bend that elbow and bring that dumbbell down to the side of our face. However, by twisting our hand around, this dumbbell is no longer stacked on top of the joint. This means there is now a challenge to the tricep throughout the whole of the exercise, even when I'm at the top. When we're going through this, we want to make sure that this joint is staying nice and still. The only thing that's happening is this dumbbell is coming down to the side of my face. Once you start moving this joint around, you're going to be getting a lot of shoulder action going on and a lot less tricep. So pick a weight that allows you to remain stable. Okay, on to the third and final bicep exercise. So one that I'm sure we're all familiar with, the dumbbell hammer curl. So much like the preacher curl that we did at the beginning, this exercise is going to target more of that shortened range. When we're in that bottom position just here and our joints are stacked, we're not going to be getting a challenge to the bicep. So ultimately we want to be picking out a weight that allows us to go into as much elbow flexion as we can personally. If you're picking a super heavy weight and after like rep 3 you're starting to swing it about all over the place, you're really not making the most of this exercise, and actually you're probably just going to be training more of your front delt than anything else. So set your ego aside and pick a weight that allows you to go through plenty of reps of full elbow flexion. Okay, we're on to the last exercise, so we're going to finish with our third tricep one. So this is essentially a bit of a time saver if you don't have the time to go through the single arm pushdowns. So we're going to do both at the same time. So this is a dual crossover cable pushdown. So we are going to put the pulleys to their highest point. We're going to grab onto one cable with the opposite hand to the side that it's coming from. Same on the other side. So I've got my hands crossed over at this point, elbows stuck to my side. I'm going to push down until my elbows extend and then bring my hands back together, stopping again once my elbows start to move. Nicely controlled. So this is a great variation of that single arm push down if you're just looking to mix it up, but also if you're strapped for time and don't want to have to do single arm. Okay, so there we have it. There is 3 bicep exercises and 3 tricep exercises. So in terms of which ones of those I would pick out, we've got 2 bicep exercises there that train more of that shortened position, so when we're up here. And we had one that was training it more in that extended position back here with the drag curl. So I would pick the drag curl and then match that up with initially one of either the dumbbell hammer curls or the preacher curls. The same with the tricep exercises. We had one that was training the tricep when we were in more of that shoulder flexed position, and then we had two where we had our elbow down by our side and we were training the tricep down here. So I would match up the skull crusher with one of either the single arm push downs or the dual push downs. So initially we're starting out with 2 bicep exercises and 2 tricep exercises that you can tag onto all of your current, well not all of them, you don't want to be doing it on every day, but you can tag them onto 1 to 2 of your workouts that you've already got prepped and planned. From here, we're then able to assess over the weeks, are we progressing and are we recovering? So with those 2 tricep exercises, I'd start out with 2 to 3 sets, and then same with the bicep exercises. 2 to 3 sets, training them through rep ranges that allow you to go heavy enough for it to be intense, but also allow you to maintain good form. I would give it anywhere between 4 to 8 weeks. We want to be assessing the progress. So in photos, in measurements, are we seeing the progress there? If yes, that's great. Are we also recovering? Do we feel like we go into each session ready to train that body part again? If the answer is yes, then there's no need to make changes. We know that we've pretty much got our reps and our sets in the correct places. If you're not progressing, but you are recovering, you know that you can increase the volume slightly. So we can either add on extra sets and reps to the existing exercises that we've already got in there, or we can also try bolting on the other exercise from this video that you didn't pick. If you're not recovering, it's simply a case of maybe we've got a little bit too much volume in here, so maybe 1 too many reps or an extra set that we don't need. We can take that out, and again, over a period of weeks, we want to assess recovery. Really, it comes down to that. Are you progressing? Are you recovering? If the answer to those 2 questions is yes, then you know that you've got everything in the right place. Couple of last points on tempo. So I spoke about where that exercise is gonna feel heaviest and where it's probably not gonna feel at its heaviest. I would look to use a tempo to really exaggerate those points. So for example, with the bicep exercises, where we were getting more of a shortened range target, so with those preacher curls and the hammer curls, I would look to add in some pauses so that we're holding it for 2 seconds in this range just here. But then also with the drag curls, I like to hold it for 2 seconds when my shoulder's in this extended position, because that's where I'm getting the most amount of challenge, and I really want to milk that. Same with the push downs. I like to kind of hold it at the bottom there for 1 to 2 seconds. 1 second is just generally a good tempo. 2 seconds, I'd class that as a bit of a pause there, and that's something that I'd maybe look to play around with. Might help you if you're somebody who struggles with mind to muscle connection, but it's also going to be a nice little intensity technique that you can add in there to make sure you're really getting the most from those movements. So that is the arm day. There are all the exercises. If you found this video helpful, please give it a like. Any questions, drop them down below, and I'll see you all in the next video.